This is EuroHooplife here with Michael. We're going to be talking about his experience in Malta. When he brought up the name of the country, I just kind of chuckled to myself. So we'll see what he's got to say today. My first year was in Turkey, so I had kind of similar relationships with some of the farther deeper into the Mediterraneans. EuroHooplife here is just we're here to record basketball players' experiences and sharing some of their experiences with future basketball players looking to sign contracts. Michael, how you doing today?
Doing all right. I can't complain. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding. Yeah, we just did a podcast on Cairns, Australia. I'm just going to kind of go over the same format and just, there's good situations, there's bad situations. What country were you playing? What year? Give me a little basis on the city and everything that happened that year.
Gotcha. So I was in Rabat in Malta, which is, Malta as a whole is a very small country. You can pretty much drive from the top to the bottom in like 40 minutes if there's no traffic. So it's very small, but very beautiful. It was my first season. So I got there in like September 2015 and left at the end of February 2016.
Okay. So what was the city like? How many people? As a kid coming out of college, as bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, you think every situation is going to be great.
Right.
What was the city like? Did someone pick you up from the airport? Did they put you up in a hotel? Little situations when you got there.
It was it was interesting. So they did pick me up from the airport. So that's a good start. I stayed about 5 minutes from our gym, but it was kind of a weird situation. So I had a roommate in a really nice place. So I will throw that in there. But my roommate actually played for another team, and he coached like some of the camps for the kids for my team because he played for my team for like, I don't know, 8 years as he was growing up and stuff. And it was his first season playing for another team. But yeah, so
you guys are giving inside scoops to each other before you guys played each other.
Right. Try to keep it separate, but and that was the other thing. There was only one. So we had a practice gym, but there was only one gym, like an arena basically, which was actually kind of nice. But every team played there.
Wow. So and there's how many? And so this is the capital of Malta.
No, not in the capital. The gym was probably like 20 minutes from the capital, though.
Okay. So everything was kind of all in one little place.
Right.
All right. Okay. So were you single at the time? Were you married? Is this a place that you would recommend American players signing a contract? What's the city like? What's the nightlife like?
I would say it depends because I was single, so I'll start that off. But it's kind of known, at least now, it's a place where a lot of older players go before they retire because it's the perfect vacation spot. The weather's always nice. The beach is always 10, 15 minutes away. Like it's a beautiful place. So I guess it just kind of depends on your age and whatever you do. But like I know there was a couple players that played there this past season. And one of them reached out to me to kind of ask about my experience and everything. And he ended up going. And I believe he got, I don't know if he's married, but him and his girlfriend, they both moved there. And it's really inexpensive. So, if you are married or in a serious relationship, I could see, people going with their,
And so let me ask you this. Since the facilities were all shared, and I've been in places like the Dominican Republic where you have, out of the 8 teams, you have 4 all using the same gym, different facilities for practice, that type of stuff. What would the facilities be like? Did you have to bring your own shoes? Did you have to bring your own practice jerseys? Did you always have to wait for the other team to be out of the gym? What would if you felt like you got injured or twisted ankle, how were the facilities for rehabilitation or anything?
Right. So as far as the games, yes, it was the same way. And it was a little weird because there was a couple of locker rooms like in the arena where we played, but there was also like kind of a big weight room area. So some of the locker rooms were for the people there, and then some of them were for the people playing. So even though there was several locker rooms, all the teams still had to use the same two. So you had to wait for come and go and that type of thing. Thank God I never got injured or anything like that.
Or a toe fungus from the gym.
Right. So I didn't need any new shoes or anything like that. But yeah, it was a little different. It wasn't quite what I expected, obviously, going straight overseas.
Any other little 15, 30-second things that you want to leave behind before we start digging into a little bit of the situations that happen or that probably players have never heard about? Any other kind of stuff you'd like to leave behind about the city and the team?
Right. I will say it's tough, as people even told me before I signed, which, that kind of goes into the story later on, but without, going too much into that, it is known for a place where people kind of, end their careers and move on to whatever they're doing. So obviously going as a rookie, that's not exactly the ideal situation you want to start with, because a lot of times, and I'd say out of all the people that played there when I was there, I believe I'm the only one that's still playing overseas. I think one more played the next year, and then that was it. So I would definitely recommend, if you're starting off, that may not be your number one choice, but something is always better than nothing. So
well said. Yep. So let's dig into this. One of the things you want to find out what the city is like. Is it a place to be able to bring family and have people visit? We got over that. Now, before we sign a contract and we sign a contract on Monday and pack up and leave for 9-10 months for that follow 3 days, 4 days later. What is the financial situation like? Are they a reliable team? Did they have stuff on time? Did they start having delays? Let's dig into a little bit of that situation over there.
There was delays. I would say for the most part, it was always around kind of the scheduled time. There was definitely delays, but at the same time, you hear stories of people going, months without getting paid. And I got paid every 2 weeks, I want to say. So there was times where it may be like a week late or so, but as a whole, I always got pretty much paid on time. So it wasn't too bad on that aspect.
So let's dig in. Any other kind of cool stories that happened over there? Lead us off. Take 3 minutes to tell us a little story. You got something brewing.
Right. This will be hard to sum up, but I would say it pretty much started technically before I got there, and it really started after I left. So I had an agent. As you'll be able to tell, I don't have him now. I have another agent.
Okay.
And I had an offer in Germany before then, and he's like, I can do something better for you. You shouldn't take this one, kind of over and over. So I was like, all right. So we waited, and nothing happened. And, just sort of the players that are listening, you never really know when you may get signed. Crazy things can happen even after the major signing period ends. But like I said, I signed in September, and most of the time people are signing kind of August, maybe even July. So at that point, I was like, all right, I have to take this. So I took it, and that was kind of that. My agent still got his cut, and then I just never really heard from him pretty much that entire time. So anyway, so I'm leaving, and it's going to be hard to sum up. So I'm leaving, and I get to the airport to go back home. So this is the end of February, and I get stopped as I'm trying to check in my bags and stuff like that. And they said, you overstayed your visa. So it's just a background with everything. Usually the president or somebody in the club is kind of in charge of your visa going into the country.
Yeah.
Most of the time. In Australia, I was in charge of it, but they kind of walked me through it. So basically what ended up happening is the president got me a tourist visa instead of a working visa. So tourist was for 3 months. I was there for 6, 7-ish months. So, they said you overstayed your visa by 3 months. So they're trying to reach out to the president. He doesn't pick up. They'll reach out to my coach, and he speaks to them on the phone in Maltese, which is like 80% Arabic. So I didn't understand any of it. And then he speaks to me, and he's like, they're going to let you go when you get back, reach out to the president. So, we can move forward, because when you overstay your visa like that, they had me banned from Europe for 3 years. So there's no way I was going to be able to come back. So obviously I missed that flight, ended up getting another one. I went home, reached out to the president. A couple of days later, he says, I spoke to the authorities. If anybody from the authorities reaches out to you, tell them that you played here for free. So I was like, well, one, that's not true. and 2, they don't have any, contact information from me. I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen. So anyway, months go by, and I kind of reach out to the president to kind of make sure everything's been kind of smoothed over. And in like, I want to say June, he said, yeah, everything's been finalized. You're good to go. So you can go back to Europe. So it's like, okay.
Apply for jobs overseas. And
Right. So I ended up signing with a team in Spain. And so, so everything's going well at that point. I leave August 23rd. I still remember the date. And it was kind of a last second thing. So
this is 2018. So this is just 4 or 5 months ago. 4 months ago. From
now.
This is 2000 end of 2016.
This is 2016, August 2016. So I signed with the team. So it was kind of a last second thing. So the flights were it was like 4 flights to get there, and they were all different airlines. So I have a flight from Dallas to Miami, Miami to Brussels, Brussels to Ibiza, Ibiza to Bilbao, I believe. And they're all different airlines. So obviously, as you know, traveling overseas, those baggage fees can be up there. Mm-hmm. So, I'm reaching out to the team. I'm like, am I going to have to pay for them at each stop, or, how's this going to work? Or actually, I say that when I'm at the airport in Dallas. They're like, just show them your itinerary and you'll be fine. So I go to Dallas. Everything's good. I go to Miami. Of course, they say you're going to have to pay for your bags. So I let the team know. They're like, pay whatever you have to pay and we'll reimburse you. So I'm like, okay. So we get to the gate where we're supposed to go to Brussels, and there's just a long line of people, and there's nothing like on the monitor. So I see the gate number, but there's nothing about Spain, Bilbao, anything. It's just empty. So come to find out, the Brussels airline, they canceled the flight, and they told the Miami airport, but they didn't tell any of the passengers. So there's people all over the country that just got there, and now there's no flight. So like, we'll put you in a hotel, fly you out the next day, blah, blah, blah. So what happens is fine. They pay for the food. Everything's good. So I go from Miami to Brussels the next day. Get to Brussels. I'm trying to check in my bag. They stop me. They say, you're showing up on the computers. You're not supposed to be here.
Because of that visa.
Right. So they take me to like the police station in the airport, and I'm there for like 3 hours, and they finally get to me. They're like, well, I explained the situation. They're like, okay, we'll put you in the center until we figure things out, and then we'll let you go. So like, all right. So I'm thinking center, just like I was in Miami, and they put me in a nice hotel center, maybe downtown Brussels, that type of thing. No. So they put me in a detention center, and to kind of fast forward through all of that, I get there. I'm there for like an hour. Nobody's speaking English. And then some guy comes up to me and he's like, English, Espanol, French. So he just names a bunch of languages. And I'm like, English. So basically what happens is they take all of my luggage and stuff that I was going with, and they put in this huge storage room. And they give me a trash bag with a pillow and covers. It was basically like hay. And they give me, I still have one. I don't know if you can see this very well. Let's put this up to the camera.
Toothbrush?
Toothpaste. They gave me a tube of toothpaste and a tube of shampoo, and they looked exactly the same.
Wow.
Same color.
Shampoo.
Yeah. So that was that. Highlights of that. So I was there for a week. I lost 15 pounds. I got bread. We ate at 8, ate at 12, ate at 6, and it was the same.
You were like in a jail, basically.
Yeah, basically. Bread and soup every meal.
So how did it all turn out afterwards?
So
the country?
Right. So I ended up getting deported, obviously, on my birthday. So that was interesting. So at that point, I was still banned from Europe, obviously. But that's how I actually started looking into Australia, because I didn't really have the choice as far as Europe was concerned.
So you find that, and how you like Australia, that transition?
Oh, I love it. Which is why I'm still trying to go back. So while I was in Australia last year, I was able to speak with the embassy, Malta and U.S. embassy. So we got that canceled. So I have been to Europe since then. Okay. But yeah, so it was a rough start.
So if we had to finish it, yeah, that's a good first year. Yeah, we can just feet jump in with both feet.
Right.
I've been in airports and teams didn't even pay for the tickets. I was like, "Can you pay for it?" I was like, "No, I'm not leaving. Reorder. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll leave tomorrow, whatever."
Right.
And, Yeah, and that's what it's like, and that's kind of what we want to be able to share with EuroHooplife is the crazy stories and the silly stories of teams that just don't have their stuff together.
Right.
So, any other kind of little 30-second tidbits you can leave for somebody for who wants to play in Rabat, Malta?
Think twice. I mean, again, it's just about doing your research, which I did as far as like the city. Like everything was safe. Again, it was beautiful. But just researching the teams and kind of the history on the president, coach, and that type of thing.
Where have you found a good place to be able to research these teams?
Google, really. One thing I really try to do is I try and reach out to, some of the Americans that have played on a team that I'm going to, that played there the year before or, somewhat recently. So like, for instance, I played in Luxembourg last year, and one of the Americans, he's been there. He's not there this year, but he was there for 4 years straight. So obviously someone's staying there, then there must be something good going on. But even the ones that are just there for a year and move on to something else.
Yeah.
So I try to reach out to them. And in addition to reaching out to teams, I try to look at the Americans that played on the team, especially ones that are, trying to move up and stuff like that. And I look at where they played afterward.
Now you do this right before while you have a contract, and you're just doing that research that day, that few days before you sign it?
Before I sign. Once I realize, things are getting serious, but before I sign with a team, I try and do all these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, was there any arbitration? Did you end up getting all your money from the team?
Well, from that, yes. I had the agent that I have now. I had him after all of that ended. And we're thinking about kind of suing for the money that I was supposed to get from the Spanish team, which obviously that didn't end up happening. But then it just went into, because it happened, a while back before we got to that point. And with the fees and lawyers and stuff, it ended up, it probably wouldn't even have been worth it.
Dig into that. Let me ask you this. Did you file an arbitration with F.I.B.A?
Right. So that was the thing. So whenever I was reaching out to my agent, he actually knows a lawyer that he has that works with his players and stuff like that. And so we were going to go that route, and then we're thinking F.I.B.A is more specific, so obviously that should help. But he's had that situation with players before, which is one of the reasons I signed with him. But the problem was, by the time that would have happened, because this was happening after the whole Spanish thing. So and another thing happened in Canada before Australia, but that's another story too.
So let's just kind of keep it, and that's where it comes. You kind of bounce it around, and that's just the journey of an international F.I.B.A basketball player. Let me ask you this: on the educational side of things, and this is one of the things that EuroHooplife wants to be able to do is hold these teams accountable for their contracts. And I think the players do the best job out of it. Agents are still on that borderline where they have to balance between player and team, where they have the team that always wants to be able to hire their players, but at the same time, how do you take care of those players, but always keep that relationship with that team? And I feel that the players are always the guys that are the last on the list. To educate players, what was the dollar amount? Because I know that if you have between 0 and 20,000, it costs about $1,500 to be able to file that paperwork to the Secretary of F.I.B.A. Then you also have to pay that. I heard 20,000 to 100,000 is 2,500, and 100,000 plus is $3,000.
Right.
You usually have to come out $3,000 to $6,000 just to file one arbitration to get it heard. Does that sound fairly accurate?
Yeah, that does sound about right, actually. In which, if it wasn't for the fact that, so I won't go into it, but the whole Canada thing that happened in December, which was only a couple months later, then we probably would have went all the way through. Because at that point, it was, what was it? August. So I signed in Spain, September 23rd. So I was already back in September. So we're still reaching out to teams at that point. But, obviously, there's only a couple of teams that aren't in the Schengen agreement with Europe and stuff. So that didn't end up working out. But if I didn't have something kind of lined up coming later, then I believe we definitely would have went through with that.
Do you felt like it was and this is kind of one of those things, is it one of those things where you don't get paid and you say, hey, just charge it to the game, they paid you enough, but is it worth the while to go after that money based on a dollar amount? Is there something like, if they owe you 10,000, it's not even worth the time or the energy. Now if it's 50 to 60,000, yes, let's move forward with it. And how long do you feel that the F.I.B.A arbitration is a useful process for you?
It definitely depends on the dollar amount, which wasn't enough to go through all of that, at least in my personal feeling. So it depends. Now, depending how much you're getting paid and where you are, which is another thing, kind of the players that are playing in some of the top leagues at the time, their importance kind of goes with how quickly FIBA gets on top of it. So obviously, being a rookie and starting off in a small league isn't going to be their highest concern. So I think it just depends on your situation and how much.
And what would you say that dollar amount? And I asked this, I think it might have been Steve and DeCorey. What do you think that dollar amount would be worth? Is it worth that time? 4 years paperwork and having someone else that's coming out of your pocket. Is it plus or minus 20,000, plus or minus 15? What do you think that dollar amount is for future players to go after?
I would say definitely plus 15,000.
Plus 15 is worth the energy and time.
Okay. That's the whole thing. You never really know how long the process is going to take. Ideally, they'd be on it and from the get-go. But when things get dragged on, then, sometimes you may lose motivation and it may not even be worth it in the end.
Yeah. No, and this is really one of the things that EuroHooplife wants to be able to portray for players out there to say, hey, what teams, what countries do you want to sign contracts? We just communicating and sharing our information with future basketball players is what we're here for.
Right.
Michael, thank you for your time. Anything else you'd like to leave us off with about Rabat and Malta specifically?
Again, outside of basketball, it was perfect. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. And I do plan on going back to visit. Basketball-wise, you just got to be careful. That's all I can really say. And do your research.
Fair enough. Michael, thank you very much for your time.
All right.
All right, bye.